During the Great Depression, from 1929 to 1939, millions of Americans faced devastating economic hardship. Out of this despair arose makeshift shantytowns known as Hoovervilles. Hoovervilles were named after President Herbert Hoover, who many blamed for the economic collapse. His administration was criticized for failing to address the crisis effectively, and the term Hooverville became a symbol of protest against his leadership. These communities were marked by their haphazard construction and poor conditions. Hoovervilles were built from whatever materials people could scavenge, including scrap wood, tin from cans, cardboard, tar paper, old metal sheets. These materials often provided little protection from the elements, leaving residents vulnerable to rain, wind, and cold. Living conditions in Hoovervilles were harsh. In most cases, there was no running water, plumbing, or waste disposal systems. These unsanitary environments led to frequent outbreaks of disease. Malnutrition was also a significant problem in Hoovervilles due to widespread poverty and limited access to food. Residents relied heavily on charity and soup kitchens, but these resources were often insufficient. There were hundreds of these Hoovervilles scattered throughout the country, with some of the most notable ones located in major cities such as New York City, Seattle, St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. Hoovervilles varied in size, ranging from small clusters of a few makeshift homes to large communities housing hundreds or even thousands of people. These shantytowns were typically found on the outskirts of cities, in parks, abandoned lots, near industrial areas and areas close to railroad tracks or waterways. The residents of Hoovervilles were those hit hardest by the Great Depression. This included unemployed workers. Many residents were laborers who had lost their jobs due to mass layoffs and factory closures. Families. Entire families who had lost their homes and savings ended up in Hoovervilles. Veterans. Some inhabitants were veterans of World War I, including members of the Bonus Army, who camped out in Washington, D.C., to demand early payment of their promised bonuses. Migrants and displaced individuals. People who had been uprooted from rural areas, particularly during events like the Dust Bowl. Marginalized groups. Ethnic minorities. Immigrants and others who faced systemic barriers to employment and assistance. Hoovervilles were often loosely united communities where residents helped one another as much as they could, despite limited resources. Shared hardships fostered a sense of camaraderie, and people often pooled what little they had, such as food, tools, or labor, to support each other. Informal leaders sometimes emerged to organize efforts like maintaining order or constructing shelters. However, the temporary and desperate nature of these settlements meant that unity varied widely, and survival was often the primary focus. Following the election of Franklin D. Roosevelt and the implementation of New Deal programs, many Hoovervilles began to decline as housing initiatives and public works projects offered some relief to the homeless and unemployed. In the end, Hoovervilles have not only become a stark symbol of the economic despair and the inequality of a broken system, but a symbol of the power of the human capacity for resilience and mutual support.